I've always been the type of man who reads the fine print. While other people skim contracts and trust handshake deals, I study every clause, every contingency, every possible outcome. It served me well in my 36 years, first as a civil engineer, where overlooking details can collapse buildings, and later in life, where overlooking details can collapse everything else. 7 years ago, I met Laura Brooks at a mutual friend's dinner party. She was 27 then, luminous in the way that made every conversation in the room gravitate toward her voice. An executive assistant at Meridian Investment Group downtown, she had this magnetic quality: sharp wit, infectious laugh, the kind of ambition that lit up her dark eyes when she talked about her career goals. I was captivated immediately. I'd purchased my house 3 years before meeting Laura, a solid 3-bedroom colonial in Maplewood with good bones and better potential. The previous owners had let it deteriorate, which meant I got it under market value. I saw what others missed: original hardwood beneath worn carpet, structural integrity behind cosmetic damage, investment potential where others saw only problems. My name alone on the deed, my down payment from years of careful saving, my equity built through weekend renovations, learning to tile bathrooms and refinish floors from YouTube videos and trial and error. Our courtship was intense and deliberate. Laura was drawn to my stability, the steady income, the owned home, the man who had his life mapped out in 5-year plans. I was intoxicated by her energy, her ability to navigate social situations that exhausted me, her dreams of climbing corporate ladders I couldn't even see. She made me feel more interesting than I'd ever felt before. 18 months later, I proposed at Chez Laurent, the French restaurant where we'd had our 3rd date. She said yes before I finished asking the question, tears streaming down her face, calling her sister from the table to share the news. We were planning a fall wedding, and Laura threw herself into the details with the same intensity she brought to everything else. 2 months before the ceremony, I brought up the prenuptial agreement. We were having dinner at home. I'd made my grandmother's pot roast recipe, Laura's favorite, when I slid the folder across our kitchen table. She looked at it like I'd placed a dead animal between the salt and pepper shakers. "What's this?" she asked, her eyebrows raised in confusion. "Just some paperwork," I replied calmly. "Protection for both of us, in case anything ever goes wrong." Laura laughed, actually laughed, shaking her head as she opened the folder. "You're so paranoid, Daniel, but I guess that's what makes you such a good engineer," she said with an amused smile. She flipped through the pages without really reading them, pausing only at the signature lines. "This is sweet, in a weird way," she continued. "You care enough about our future to worry about protecting it." I watched her sign each page, her signature flowing and confident. She didn't ask questions about the specific clauses, didn't request her own lawyer to review the terms, didn't pause at the section that would matter most 7 years later. Any proven infidelity by either party immediately voids all claims to marital assets acquired before or during the marriage. "There," she said cheerfully, sliding the folder back to me. "Happy now?" "Yes," I answered simply. "I am." Our 7 years together unfolded like a carefully constructed blueprint. Laura's promotions came steadily. Senior assistant, then executive coordinator, then client relationship manager. My own career advanced in parallel. Project engineer to senior engineer to construction manager. We developed rhythms, Saturday morning farmers market runs, Sunday afternoon home improvement projects, annual trips to Laura's family in California, quiet evenings where she'd work on her laptop while I sketched building designs at the kitchen table. No children yet. We'd agreed to wait until Laura reached senior management, until we could afford the lifestyle she envisioned for our family. She was methodical about her career advancement, networking at company events with the focus of a general planning campaign strategy. I admired her determination, her ability to charm executives twice her age, her refusal to accept limitations others tried to place on her. For 7 years, I believed I knew my wife completely. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was right about the prenup. 6 months ago, Laura started coming home smelling like cologne I didn't wear. It was subtle at first, a faint scent clinging to her blazers. something expensive and masculine that lingered when she kissed my cheek at the front door. When I mentioned it, she'd shrug dismissively and explain, "I've been in close meetings all day, cramped conference rooms with executives who probably bathe in designer fragrances." But that was just the beginning. Laura began dressing differently for work. Designer labels appeared in our closet, silk blouses from Theory, Italian leather heels that cost more than her monthly car payment, jewelry I definitely hadn't purchased. A delicate gold bracelet that caught the light when she gestured during conversations. Pearl earrings that made her look sophisticated in a way that felt unfamiliar. A pendant with a small diamond that nestled perfectly in the hollow of her throat. "New jewelry?" I asked one morning, watching her fasten the bracelet. "Victor gave it to me," she replied casually, not meeting my eyes in the bathroom mirror. Closing bonus for the Hartwell account. Victor Kane. Her boss's name, which I'd heard maybe twice in 7 years of marriage, suddenly appeared in every other sentence. "Victor needs me to review the Bakley portfolio," she'd announce. "Victor wants me at the client dinner Thursday," she'd explain when canceling our plans. "Victor says I'm the best relationship manager he's ever worked with," she'd mention with obvious pride. Her voice changed when she said his name, softer, almost reverent, like she was speaking about someone who'd personally hung the stars in her sky. The late nights multiplied exponentially. Big project became her default explanation for everything. Missed dinners, canceled weekend plans, the growing distance between us that felt like watching someone slowly walk away until they disappeared completely. She'd come home after 10 o'clock, claiming exhaustion, picking at the reheated meals I'd left wrapped in the refrigerator. Her phone became a fortress. New password, changed without explanation. Screen always facing down during conversations. She'd take it with her to the bathroom during showers, something she'd never done in 7 years together. Notifications set to hidden, so I couldn't see message previews when it buzzed on the kitchen counter. When my calls came through during work hours, she'd reject them or let them go to voicemail, texting back hours later with brief apologies. In meetings. "Talk tonight." Except we never did talk at night anymore. The intimacy between us died slowly, then all at once. Laura stopped initiating physical affection, stopped reaching for my hand during movies, stopped curling against me in bed on Sunday mornings. When I tried to bridge the growing gap between us, she'd claim headaches or exhaustion. "I'm just so tired lately," she'd murmur, turning away from me in bed. When she did comply with my attempts at intimacy, she was there mechanically, her body present but her mind clearly elsewhere, staring at the ceiling like she was calculating grocery lists instead of connecting with her husband. She stopped asking about my projects, stopped laughing at my dry observations about coworkers, stopped caring about the small rituals we'd built together over 7 years. Sunday morning coffee in bed, Friday night takeout while watching documentaries. The way we used to debrief our weeks over shared meals and actual conversation. I found myself lying awake nights, listening to her breathe beside me, feeling like a stranger had infiltrated my bed and my life. The woman who used to tell me everything now shared nothing. The wife who used to seek my opinion on work decisions now made choices I heard about secondhand, if at all. 4 months into these changes, I considered confronting her directly. But my engineering mind rejected that approach. Too many variables, too much risk of her covering tracks or convincing me I was paranoid. If Laura was having an affair, asking directly would only teach her to be more careful. I needed evidence. I needed certainty. I called Raymond Cross on a Tuesday morning. A colleague from my divorce attorney friend's firm had recommended him. Private investigator, 20 years experience, discretion guaranteed. We met at a downtown coffee shop during my lunch break. I slid a photo of Laura across the small table between us. "I think my wife is cheating," I stated matter-of-factly. "I need to know for sure." Raymond studied the picture. Laura laughing at our anniversary dinner last year, radiant and happy, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Work schedule? Regular patterns?" he asked professionally. I gave him everything. Her office address, typical hours, the mysterious late meetings that seemed to happen every Tuesday and Thursday. Raymond quoted his rates, $3,000 retainer, detailed reports, photo evidence if applicable. I paid in cash. How long do you want me on this? He inquired. Until you find proof she's cheating, I answered firmly, or until I'm convinced I'm wrong. It took Raymond 3 weeks. The photos arrived via encrypted email on a Tuesday night while Laura worked late again. I opened them alone in my home office, each image a systematic demolition of my marriage. Laura and Victor Kane kissing in a parking garage, her hands tangled in his silver hair. Entering the Grandview Hotel together, his hand possessive on her lower back. Sitting intimately close at Mercato, the expensive Italian restaurant, his thumb stroking her wrist while she gazed at him like a lovesick teenager. I stared at the evidence for an hour, my face expressionless, my engineer's mind already shifting from grief to calculation. Then I called Margaret Sinclair, the best divorce attorney in the city. I didn't tell Laura about the photos. Instead, I started installing cameras in every room of our house. If Victor Kane wanted to destroy my marriage, I'd make sure the whole world watched it happen. The 2 weeks following Raymond's report were the most controlled performance of my life. Every morning, I woke beside Laura, kissed her forehead, and asked about her day with the same gentle concern I'd shown for 7 years. "Sleep well?" I'd inquire softly. "Big day ahead?" She'd respond with distracted nods, already checking her phone for messages from Victor. Every evening, I listened to her elaborate lies about demanding clients and urgent projects, nodding sympathetically while calculating her financial exposure. "Victor needs me to stay late again," she'd announce. "Of course," I'd reply understandingly. "Work comes first." I cooked dinners she barely touched, watched shows she wasn't paying attention to, maintained the illusion of normalcy with the precision of a method actor playing the most important role of his career. Behind the scenes, I worked with Margaret Sinclair to build an airtight case. Margaret reviewed the prenuptial agreement with the thoroughness of a forensic accountant. The document had been drafted by Bakley, Klein & Associates 7 years ago, one of the city's top family law firms, ironically. Every clause was enforceable, every contingency legally sound. The infidelity provision was explicit and devastating. Any proven adultery immediately voided all claims to assets acquired before or during marriage. "This is bulletproof," Margaret declared, sliding the prenup back across her mahogany desk. "Your wife will walk away with exactly what she brought into the marriage, her personal belongings and that Honda Civic. Everything else stays with you." I filed for divorce 2 weeks after receiving Raymond's evidence. Margaret cited irreconcilable differences in the public filing, but attached the adultery evidence in sealed court documents. The court date was set for 90 days out, standard procedure. Laura wouldn't be served papers for another month. Strategic timing, Margaret recommended, to prevent her from hiding assets or preparing a defense. During this window, I installed a comprehensive security system throughout our house. High-definition cameras in the living room, kitchen, hallway, and front entrance. Cloud-based storage with motion activation and real-time streaming to my phone. When the security company technician asked about the extensive coverage, I explained casually, "I'm concerned about recent break-ins in the neighborhood." "Smart thinking," he replied, not knowing how smart it really was. I documented our marital assets with obsessive detail, bank statements going back 7 years, investment portfolio summaries, retirement account balances, the recent house appraisal showing $300,000 in equity, receipts for every major purchase, proof of my sole ownership of the property. Margaret assembled everything into an impenetrable financial fortress that would withstand any challenge Laura's eventual attorney might mount. Then I made a calculated decision that revealed the true scope of my planning. Contacted the HR department at Meridian Investment Group, not to file a formal complaint. That would be too obvious, too traceable back to me. Instead, I had Raymond send an anonymous tip about potential ethics violations involving senior management and subordinate staff, suggesting they might want to investigate Victor Kane's professional conduct with certain employees. Investment firms live in terror of liability lawsuits. Sexual harassment claims, preferential treatment allegations, workplace relationship scandals, any of these could trigger regulatory investigations and massive financial exposure. HR departments at firms like Meridian don't ignore anonymous tips. They investigate them with the paranoia of people whose bonuses depend on avoiding scandals. I also began subtle social preparation. At dinners with mutual friends, I'd mention casually that Laura seemed stressed lately. "I'm worried about her work demands," I'd confide to our friends Mark and Sarah over dinner. "I just hope our marriage can survive her increasingly demanding career." "You're such a supportive husband," Sarah would respond sympathetically. "Laura's lucky to have you. If only she knew." My emotional state during this preparation phase surprised me. I expected rage, devastation, the classic stages of grief everyone talks about. Instead, I felt oddly calm, almost clinical. Grief would come later, I told myself. During those 2 weeks, I felt like I was back in college, solving a complex engineering problem. Variables, constraints, optimization, finding the most efficient path to the desired outcome. The difference was, the stakes weren't a grade. They were my entire life. I spent my evenings in the home office, reviewing divorce paperwork and surveillance reports, while Laura worked late with her lover 20 floors above downtown. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was building her new life while I was systematically dismantling the old one, and neither of us knew what the other was doing. One night, I sat at my desk reviewing the financial statements Margaret had prepared when I realized I felt no guilt about what was coming. Laura had made her choices with full knowledge of their potential consequences. Victor had walked into another man's marriage with arrogance and entitlement, assuming the methodical husband would simply step aside when confronted with his superior charisma and financial power. They were both about to learn what happened when you underestimated the man who always read the fine print. Laura came home that night after 11, kissed my cheek absently, and disappeared upstairs. I watched her go, then returned to my laptop where Raymond's latest surveillance photos were waiting. Laura and Victor from that very evening, laughing over wine at the Grandview Hotel bar, her hand resting on his thigh, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. I closed the laptop and whispered to the empty room. One more week. On Tuesday evening, exactly 3 weeks after I filed for divorce, Laura walked through our front door holding Victor Kane's hand. He'd come to my house to claim my wife. He had no idea he was walking into a trap. I was reading a structural engineering journal on the living room couch when I heard the key turn in our front door. 8:47 p.m., later than usual for Laura's client meetings. Then I heard something that made my pulse quicken. 2 sets of footsteps. The cameras were recording. Laura entered first, and behind her, holding her hand with casual possessiveness, was Victor Kane. I recognized him immediately from Raymond's photographs. 6'2", broad shoulders filling an expensive charcoal suit, salt and pepper hair styled with the precision of a man who'd never been told no in his privileged life. He surveyed my living room with barely concealed contempt, like a real estate developer touring a property he was considering demolishing. I looked up from my journal, set it carefully on the coffee table. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly. Victor laughed, actually laughed, and walked deeper into my living room without invitation. His confidence was staggering, the arrogance of a man accustomed to taking whatever he wanted simply by wanting it. "Actually, yeah," he replied with condescending amusement. "I'm here to talk to you about Laura." His tone was like he was explaining basic mathematics to a child. Victor sat on my couch, spread his arms across the back cushions like he already owned the furniture, and delivered his speech with the casual cruelty of someone who'd clearly rehearsed these words. "Look, Daniel," he continued, "we both know this marriage has run its course. Laura deserves better than whatever this is." He gestured dismissively at our home, at me, at 7 years of shared life. "And I'm here to do the right thing. I'm asking you to let her go cleanly. No hard feelings." Laura stood beside him, chin raised, trying to project confidence, but her eyes betraying nervousness. She'd worn her best dress for this occasion, I noticed, the black one I'd bought her for our anniversary dinner 2 years ago. The symbolism felt intentional. "It's time we stopped pretending, Daniel," she added, her voice carrying forced maturity. "You and I have been over for a while. We both know it." I let them finish their prepared presentation. Then I stood, walked to the kitchen where I'd prepared the manila envelope that morning, and returned. I dropped it on the coffee table between them with a heavy thud that echoed in the sudden silence. "What's that?" Laura asked, her confidence cracking like ice under pressure. "Private investigators' report," I replied, my voice ice cold. "Photos, videos, timestamps, witness statements. You two have been screwing for 3 months. Tuesday and Thursday evenings mostly. The Grand View Hotel, Suite 412. You're creatures of habit." Victor's smirk evaporated like smoke. Laura went pale, her hand reaching toward the envelope, then pulling back like it might burst into flames. I continued, each word a surgical strike designed for maximum damage. "I filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. The prenuptial agreement you signed, Laura, the one you didn't bother reading, clearly states that infidelity voids all claims to marital assets. You get nothing. No house, no savings, no retirement accounts. You'll leave this marriage exactly as you entered it, with your car and your clothes." Laura tried to stand, panic overtaking her carefully constructed composure. "Daniel, wait," she pleaded desperately. "We can talk about this." "Sit down," I commanded sharply. The authority in my voice made her collapse back onto the couch like her strings had been cut. I turned to Victor, and the temperature in the room dropped to Arctic levels. "And you," I said coldly. "You're trespassing. Those cameras," I pointed to the living room security system, "are recording everything. You entered my home without invitation and attempted to intimidate me into surrendering my wife. That's breaking and entering, harassment, and depending on how I frame it to the police, possibly extortion." Victor stood, trying to reclaim his dominant position through sheer physical presence. "I didn't threaten you," he protested. "You demanded I give you my wife," I interrupted. "In my house, after screwing her for 3 months behind my back. That's absolutely a threat." Victor stepped forward, towering over me, puffing his chest like a territorial animal. "You think you scare me?" he sneered arrogantly. "I make more in a month than you make in a year. I'll bury you in legal fees. I'll destroy—" I moved. The first strike was precise, both hands grabbing Victor's expensive lapels and slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. His head snapped back, leaving a small dent in the drywall. Before he could recover from the shock, I drove my fist into his solar plexus, a calculated blow that evacuated every molecule of air from his lungs and left him gasping like a landed fish. Victor doubled over, wheezing, and I brought my knee up into his ribs with the full force of 7 years of suppressed rage. The crack was audible. Victor crumpled, and I followed him down with a vicious kick to his groin that sent him into a fetal curl on my hardwood floor. Tears streaming down his face, all arrogance stripped away in 30 seconds of controlled violence. "Daniel, stop!" Laura screamed, grabbing my arm frantically. I shoved her away, not violently, but firmly enough to send her stumbling backward into the coffee table. I stood over Victor, breathing steady, knuckles split and bleeding, looking down at the man who thought he could walk into another man's home and steal whatever caught his fancy. "Get out of my house! Now!" I ordered coldly. Victor tried to crawl toward the front door, groaning pathetically, clutching his ribs and groin, reduced to a broken shell of the confident predator who'd entered my home 20 minutes earlier. Laura rushed to help him, both of them sobbing now, all pretense shattered, the ugly reality of their situation finally penetrating their delusional bubble. I picked up the divorce papers from the side table and threw them at Laura's feet. "Sign them," I instructed firmly. "Don't contest. The evidence is overwhelming and you cannot win." Laura knelt beside Victor, supporting his weight, mascara running down her face like black tears. "Daniel, please," she begged desperately. "We can work something out. Oh, and one more thing," I announced, crossing my arms almost casually. "I sent the complete investigation report to your company's HR department this morning. Detailed evidence of your affair, including documentation that Victor used company resources, expense accounts, client dinners, business travel, to facilitate your relationship. They'll be calling you both in tomorrow. Workplace relationships between management and subordinates violate Meridian's ethics code. I checked. Laura's face crumbled completely. Victor groaned, barely conscious, probably concussed. They stumbled toward the door together, Victor leaning heavily on Laura, leaving small drops of blood on my pristine hardwood floors. I followed them, opened the door, and watched them struggle down the front steps. Victor could barely walk. Laura was sobbing hysterically, trying to support his weight while fumbling with her phone. I closed the door, locked it, engaged the deadbolt, and walked to the kitchen. I poured myself 2 fingers of Jameson and sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline, but face completely calm. My phone buzzed. Text from Margaret Sinclair. "Papers served. She has 30 days to respond. Judging by the security footage you're streaming me, I don't think she'll contest." I allowed myself a small smile. The next morning, Laura and Victor learned that destroying a marriage has collateral damage far beyond a living room. The morning after the confrontation, both Laura and Victor received calls from Brenda Lawson, head of HR and legal compliance at Meridian Investment Group. Neither knew the other was being summoned. Neither suspected the systematic destruction about to unfold. Margaret received the details through court filings and discreet inquiries Raymond made with contacts throughout the financial district. The investment world is surprisingly small, and scandals travel fast. Brenda sat across from Laura in a sterile conference room at 9 a.m. sharp, a thick folder between them. My investigation report, meticulously organized and legally devastating. Brenda's expression was professional but cold, the look of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. "We've received comprehensive evidence of a workplace relationship between you and Victor Kane that violates company policy," Brenda began without preamble, her voice clinical. "The evidence includes photographs, hotel records, expense report irregularities, and witness testimony spanning 3 months," Laura tried to explain, stammering nervously. "It's not what it looks like. This is recent, and it doesn't affect my work." "Mr. Kane used company credit cards for personal dinners with you," Brenda interrupted sharply. "He approved expense reports for travel where you shared accommodations. He gave you bonuses and raises that our review suggests were not merit-based. This creates massive liability for the firm: sexual harassment claims, preferential treatment, financial impropriety." The parallel conversation with Victor happened simultaneously in another conference room. He tried to bluster, threatening legal action. "This is harassment," he declared indignantly. "I've been with this company for 15 years, which makes your behavior even more inexcusable," Brenda replied coldly. "You knew better." "Effective immediately," she continued to both of them. "In separate rooms, you are terminated for gross violation of our ethics code and professional conduct standards. Security will escort you out. You have 1 hour to collect personal belongings. Your final paychecks will be mailed. Any attempt to contact clients or employees will result in legal action for corporate espionage." Their walk of shame became legend in downtown financial circles. Both escorted by security through the main office during peak morning hours, carrying boxes of personal items while hundreds of colleagues watched in stunned silence. Phones appeared, taking photos, typing messages. By lunch, the story had spread through every investment firm in the city. A junior analyst whispered to his cubicle neighbor, "Did you hear about Victor and Laura?" "The affair?" his colleague replied, not looking up from his screen. "Everyone's talking about it. Company credit cards, hotel rooms, the whole thing. Career suicide," the first one concluded. "Nobody's going to touch them after this." Victor's destruction was particularly spectacular. As a senior vice president, his career had been built on reputation and network connections. In the incestuous world of high finance, word traveled at light speed. Other firms heard about the ethics violation, the termination, the sordid circumstances. Doors began closing before Victor could even start making calls to his professional contacts. When he reached out to his former colleague at Goldman Sachs, the response was swift and brutal. "Sorry, Victor, but we can't take that kind of risk. his contact explained awkwardly. You understand, Laura faced similar professional exile, but with added social judgment. She'd been the subordinate in the affair, which somehow made her more culpable in the twisted calculus of workplace gossip. Other executive assistants distanced themselves from her. Her carefully built network evaporated overnight. Meanwhile, my divorce proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Margaret filed motions, presented irrefutable evidence, and Laura's court-appointed attorney, an overworked public defender, she could barely afford without her meridian salary, advised her not to contest. The prenup is airtight. He told her during their brief consultation, shaking his head. The photographic evidence is overwhelming. You signed this agreement voluntarily with independent counsel available. You will lose, and fighting will only cost you money you don't have. But surely there's something... Laura began desperately. Nothing, he replied firmly. Your husband played this perfectly. 60 days after the confrontation, the divorce was finalized. I retained the house, all savings accounts, all retirement portfolios, all investments. Laura received her personal belongings, her Honda Civic with 18 months of payments remaining, and exactly nothing else. 7 years of marriage. And she walked away with less than she'd entered with because now she carried legal fees she couldn't pay. The final destruction of Laura and Victor's relationship followed predictably. Without jobs, without money, without the forbidden thrill of secrecy that had sustained their affair, their love evaporated like morning fog. They fought constantly in her cramped studio apartment. This is your fault, Victor accused angrily. You should have been more careful. My fault? Laura shot back bitterly. You're the one who insisted on using company cards for everything. You could have said no, he replied, coldly. Just like you could have kept it in your pants? She retorted. Margaret gleefully included their mutual recriminations in court documents as evidence of their complete lack of remorse. Within 2 months of the confrontation, Victor and Laura broke up viciously in the parking lot of Laura's new studio apartment. Victor moved to Phoenix, taking contract work at 60% of his previous salary, unable to get recommendations from any firm in our city. Laura moved to Denver, working administrative jobs for a third of her meridian income, starting over from absolute zero at 34 years old. The chapter ended with me receiving the final divorce decree in the mail. I filed it carefully in my home office, poured myself a drink, and felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not even relief, just quiet. 6 months later, I realized I hadn't thought about Laura in weeks. That's when I knew I'd truly won. 6 months after the divorce finalization, I sit on my back porch on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, watching sunrise paint my well-maintained yard in gold and amber. The house is entirely mine again, quiet, clean, peaceful in a way it hasn't been in years. I've had the walls repainted, replaced the furniture Laura had chosen, made the space my own again. The anger that sustained me through investigation and confrontation has faded, replaced by something gentler. Acceptance, maybe, or simply indifference. Laura is a closed chapter, filed away like the divorce decree in my office. My life has moved forward deliberately. I received a promotion 3 months ago, senior project manager, leading the firm's largest infrastructure contract. My colleagues respect me. Word of my divorce spread quietly, but without judgment. In their world of engineers and contracts, my methodical approach to dissolving my marriage simply confirmed what they already knew. Daniel Hayes thinks ahead. I'm dating again. Nothing serious, nothing rushed. Claire, a landscape architect I met through mutual friends. She's divorced herself. Funny and kind and refreshingly direct. We take walks, cook dinners together, share stories about our cautious re-entries into vulnerability. I find myself laughing more, sleeping better, remembering what peace feels like. My coworker Jason asked me once over lunch, "Whatever happened to Laura?" I shrugged, taking a bite of my sandwich. "She's gone," I replied simply. "That's all that matters." I never think about her anymore, and when I do, it's with the detached curiosity you might feel about a stranger who once briefly intersected your life. Meanwhile, 800 miles away in Denver, Laura sits in a cramped studio apartment. scrolling through old photos on her phone late at night when she can't sleep. Pictures of the house she lost, the life she destroyed, the confident woman she used to be when she thought she was untouchable. She tried reaching out to me once, 3 months after the divorce. A long email apologizing, explaining, pleading for acknowledgement. I blocked her address immediately. She tried reaching out to Victor. He never responded. She works as an administrative assistant now at a mid-sized logistics company, making barely enough for rent and groceries. She's lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, developed insomnia, sees a therapist on a sliding scale payment plan. Every night, she thinks about the prenup she didn't read carefully, the man she underestimated completely, and the choices that cost her everything. I'm in my home office, reviewing blueprints for a new project, when my phone buzzes. A text from Claire asking if I want to grab dinner tonight. I smile, type back, yes, looking forward to it, and return to my work. People ask me sometimes if I regret how things ended, if I think I went too far. If I feel guilty for destroying Laura's life so completely, I don't. She made her choices. Victor made his. I simply ensured they faced the consequences, and now, sitting in the house I built, with my life reconstructed on my own terms, I sleep perfectly well at night, because in the end, I didn't just win the divorce, I reclaimed my dignity, my peace, and my future, and no one, no arrogant boss, no faithless wife, no amount of betrayal was ever going to take that from me.